An MI6 officer just slapped a royal guard in the face right in front of Buckingham Palace. The tourists gasped, cameras kept rolling, and what unfolded next will forever alter your perception of true resilience. This wasn't merely a heated dispute or a simple misunderstanding. This was a deliberate, strategic assault on the very essence of tradition. The agent remained utterly composed, silent, and unyielding. But within 10 seconds, something extraordinary happened that proved why you should never underestimate the resolve of a royal guard. The consequences will render you utterly astonished. If you're as surprised as we were, hit that like button. Be sure to subscribe for more astonishing tales like this, and leave a comment. Where in the world are you tuning in from? The frost hung thick on the cobblestones of St. James's Palace that December morning, as Lance Corporal Elijah Ward took his position outside the historic gates. His breath formed small clouds in the bitter air, but his face remained a mask of perfect composure. The red wool of his tunic stood out against the gray London sky, every brass button polished to mirror brightness. His bearskin hat added 8 inches to his already impressive frame, making him appear more monument than man. Ward's eyes, though forward-facing and unblinking to the casual observer, constantly swept the perimeter, with the trained awareness of someone who had spent 3 tours scanning Afghan villages for threats. At 27, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of a decorated veteran who had earned his place among the Queen's Guard through more than just ceremony. The purple and green ribbon of his Afghanistan campaign medal sat perfectly aligned on his chest, a small reminder of the warrior beneath the ceremonial uniform. Tourists began gathering as the morning sun broke through the winter clouds, their cameras clicking steadily as they marveled at Ward's absolute stillness. A young mother lifted her daughter to get a better view, whispering about how the guards never moved no matter what happened around them. An elderly American couple debated whether the guard was even real, their voices carrying the wonder that drew millions to witness this living piece of British tradition. The crowd's respectful murmur filled the air as more visitors arrived, forming a semicircle around Ward's position. They spoke in hushed tones about the guard's legendary discipline, sharing stories they had heard about guards standing through thunderstorms, fainting tourists, and even terrorist alerts without breaking their stance. Children stared in amazement at this man who seemed frozen in time, their parents explaining the centuries of tradition he represented. Into this peaceful scene walked Constable Darren Lomax, his MI6 uniform marking him as distinctly different from the reverential crowd. His stride carried the impatience of someone dealing with London's endless logistical problems. A delivery van had blocked a crucial intersection, and Lomax had spent the last hour directing frustrated drivers around the obstruction. Lomax's jaw was set tight as he surveyed the scene, his eyes narrowing at the crowd treating Ward like a tourist attraction. The constable had started his shift 3 hours earlier with back-to-back domestic disturbance calls, followed by a shoplifting incident where the suspect had run him through 4 blocks of crowded streets. His patience was already thread-thin when he arrived at the palace, expecting to handle routine crowd control. The contrast between the two men couldn't have been more striking. Ward stood motionless as stone, his breathing so controlled it was barely visible, every muscle held in perfect military bearing. His presence commanded respect through discipline earned in combat zones, where movement meant survival and stillness meant death. Lomax paced restlessly behind the barrier, his energy coiled and agitated, his authority expressed through constant motion and verbal commands. Tourists continued photographing Ward, their flashes reflecting off his polished boots and brass fittings. A teenage girl tried to get him to smile, waving enthusiastically while her friends giggled behind their phones. An older gentleman explained to his grandson how these guards protected the royal family, their training so intense that nothing could break their concentration. Lomax watched this display with growing irritation, his mood darkening as he observed what he saw as people treating a grown man like a statue. The delivery van situation had left him feeling powerless against London's traffic chaos, and now he witnessed hundreds of people showing more respect to this silent guard than most civilians showed to working police officers. Ward's eyes remained fixed straight ahead, but his peripheral vision caught every movement in the crowd. His training had taught him to assess threats while maintaining his ceremonial duties, a skill that required years of practice to master. The controlled breathing techniques learned in combat helped him maintain perfect posture despite the winter cold seeping through his wool uniform. The morning crowd swelled as tour buses arrived, disgorging more visitors eager to witness the famous changing of the guard ceremony still hours away. Their excitement filled the air as they shared cameras and compared photos, each trying to capture the perfect shot of this living symbol of British military tradition. Lomax's radio squawked again with another traffic incident requiring his attention, but his eyes remained fixed on Ward with something that looked like resentment. The guard's unwavering discipline seemed to mock the constable's own struggles with authority, creating a tension that began building like storm clouds on a clear day. The ordinary world of ceremonial duty was about to collide with modern policing frustrations, and neither man knew how drastically their lives were about to change. The breaking point came when Lomax's radio crackled with yet another traffic complaint, his sergeant's voice cutting through the morning air with barely concealed irritation. The constable's face darkened as he absorbed the message, his jaw working silently, while tourists continued their cheerful photography around Ward's motionless figure. Something shifted in Lomax's demeanor as he clipped the radio back to his belt, his eyes fixing on the guard with a new intensity that had nothing to do with crowd control. Lomax stepped closer to the rope barrier separating the ceremonial space from the public walkway, his boots scraping against the frost-covered stones. The tourists nearest to him sensed the change in atmosphere, their conversations dropping to whispers as they watched this uniformed officer approach the traditionally sacred boundary. Built like a nightclub bouncer who'd eaten too many donuts, Lomax carried himself with the aggressive confidence of someone accustomed to immediate compliance from civilians. His voice rang out across the morning quiet, sharp and commanding in a way that made several tourists step back instinctively. "Right then, you need to move along from this position," Lomax announced, his words carrying the expectation of instant obedience that worked on traffic violators and petty criminals. The crowd turned to stare, their cameras now capturing something they had never expected to witness at the palace gates. Ward remained absolutely motionless, his gaze fixed straight ahead as if Lomax simply didn't exist. The guard's breathing continued in the same controlled rhythm he had maintained for the past 2 hours, his posture unchanged despite the direct challenge to his authority. His training had prepared him for distractions, hecklers, and even physical threats, but the response was always the same, complete and total stillness. The tourists exchanged uncomfortable glances as Lomax waited for acknowledgement that never came. A middle-aged woman whispered to her husband, "He's not allowed to move, is he?" Her companion nodded knowingly, replying, "That's the whole point, they're like statues, famous for it." Their conversation carried clearly in the crisp air, and Lomax's face flushed red as civilians corrected his fundamental misunderstanding of the situation. Lomax's frustration transformed into something more dangerous as he realized his standard intimidation tactics meant nothing to a man trained to ignore Taliban fighters shooting at him from Afghan mountainsides. The constable's voice grew louder, more insistent, as he repeated his demand for Ward to move. When silence remained his only answer, Lomax took a step that violated centuries of protocol. He ducked under the rope barrier and entered the ceremonial space. The crowd's murmur turned to audible concern as they watched this unprecedented breach of royal protocol. Phones that had been casually recording tourist photos now focused intently on what was clearly becoming a serious incident. A teenage girl held her device steady, capturing every word as Lomax positioned himself directly in front of Ward's immobile form. Ward's peripheral vision registered Lomax's approach, but his expression remained carved from stone. 3 tours in Afghanistan had taught him that showing reaction to provocation only invited more aggression. His muscles remained locked in perfect military bearing, even as the constable moved close enough that Ward could smell the coffee on his breath. Lomax's voice dropped to a more personal register, his tone shifting from official command to something uglier. "What's the matter? Battery died in your costume?" he asked, his words drawing uncomfortable chuckles from a few tourists who immediately regretted their response. The joke fell flat in the morning air, highlighting how inappropriate this entire confrontation had become. The constable's internal struggle played out across his face as he confronted something his police training had never prepared him for: complete indifference to his authority. Every interaction in his career had involved some form of acknowledgement, whether compliance or defiance, but Ward offered neither. This absolute dismissal struck at the core of Lomax's professional identity. A father in the crowd stepped forward, his voice carrying parental authority as he addressed the increasingly agitated officer. "Officer, he's just doing his job," the man said, his tone respectful but firm. The intervention from a civilian only deepened Lomax's humiliation, as he realized the entire crowd was witnessing his failure to command respect from a silent guard. Lomax's face contorted with anger as he registered the phones recording his professional breakdown. The teenage girl's camera captured every detail of his growing rage, documenting what would soon become evidence of a catastrophic failure of judgment. His breathing quickened as ego and frustration began overriding years of MI6 training. The constable's hands clenched into fists as he stared at Ward's impassive face, searching for any crack in the guard's composure. Finding none, something snapped in Lomax's mind. The rational part of his brain that understood consequences and protocol shut down, replaced by pure wounded pride demanding satisfaction. Ward continued his vigil, unaware that his perfect discipline was about to be tested in a way no ceremonial training had ever anticipated. The moment hung suspended in the frozen December air like a photograph waiting to be developed. Lomax's right hand drew back slowly, his face twisted with rage as tourists continued clicking their cameras, unaware they were about to capture something that would violate centuries of British military tradition. Ward remained motionless in his perfect ceremonial stance, his eyes fixed straight ahead even as the constable's palm prepared to strike. The crowd sensed something terrible approaching, their cheerful chatter dying to whispers as phones turned toward the unfolding confrontation. The crack of Lomax's palm against Ward's cheek shattered the morning quiet like a gunshot echoing off the palace walls. The sound carried across the stone courtyard with such sharp finality that pigeons scattered from nearby ledges, their wings beating frantically against the sudden violence. Ward's head moved slightly with the impact before returning to its original position, his expression remaining unchanged, as if the blow had been nothing more than a gust of winter wind. The teenage girl's phone captured every detail as Ward absorbed the assault without flinching, blinking, or breaking his military bearing. His bearskin hat remained perfectly positioned, his brass buttons still gleaming in the pale sunlight, his posture as rigid as the moment before impact. The guard's breathing continued in the same controlled rhythm, his chest rising and falling with mechanical precision despite the stinging pain radiating across his cheek. The crowd's collective gasp erupted into something louder and angrier as the reality of what they had witnessed sank in. A woman near the front barrier cried out, "Oh my God!" her voice slicing through the stunned quiet that ensued after the strike. Other voices quickly chimed in, onlookers exclaiming, "You can't do that!" as their casual morning sightseeing transformed into something far more serious and disturbing. Children in the crowd began crying, their young minds unable to process why someone would hurt the silent soldier they had been admiring moments before. A mother pulled her daughter closer, her voice trembling with indignation as she said, "Some people don't understand respect." The words carried clearly across the courtyard, serving as both comfort to her child and condemnation of Lomax's actions. Lomax's voice became shaky as he realized what he had done, his earlier confidence evaporating under the weight of dozens of horrified stares. The tourists looked at him like he had just kicked a dog or knocked an ice cream out of a child's hand, their expressions shifting from confusion to disgust in the span of seconds. Phones that had been recording the guard's discipline now focused on documenting the constable's complete loss of professional control. An elderly gentleman stepped forward from the crowd, his walking stick tapping against the cobblestones as he pointed an accusing finger at Lomax. "That man is serving his country," he declared, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had likely witnessed the Blitz as a child. "You should be ashamed of yourself." The words hung in the air like a judgment, supported by murmurs of agreement from the gathered tourists. Ward's silence became more powerful than any retaliation could have been, his unwavering composure transforming him into a living symbol of unbreakable discipline. The red mark on his cheek stood out against his pale skin, but his eyes remained fixed straight ahead, refusing to acknowledge either the assault or the growing chaos around him. His perfect stillness in the face of unprovoked aggression demonstrated a strength that transcended anything physical force could achieve. The crowd's anger continued building as more voices joined the chorus of condemnation. An American tourist pulled out his phone to dial emergency services, his Midwestern accent carrying clearly as he reported an assault on a British soldier. A French family began speaking rapidly among themselves, their outraged tones needing no translation as they gestured toward the red mark on Ward's face. Lomax backed away slightly, his face pale as he began to comprehend the magnitude of his mistake. The tourists surrounding him no longer saw an MI6 officer maintaining order, but a bully who had attacked someone unable to defend himself. Their cameras continued recording, capturing every moment of his growing panic, as the reality of consequences began setting in. The assault on tradition itself had created something unprecedented in the palace grounds, transforming casual observers into active witnesses demanding justice. Ward's continued silence and perfect military bearing made him appear more monument than man, his discipline elevated to something almost sacred by the violence he had endured without response. What happened next would prove that attacking one Queen's Guard meant facing them all, as centuries of military brotherhood prepared to respond to this unprecedented violation of everything they represented. 10 seconds. That's all it took for the palace grounds to transform from a tourist attraction into a military operation that would leave everyone speechless. As the echo of Lomax's slap faded into the winter air, something extraordinary began unfolding around Ward's motionless figure. The tourists, still processing what they had witnessed, found themselves about to see something even more remarkable. 9 seconds. The eastern archway erupted with movement as 4 guards in full ceremonial dress appeared in perfect formation, their rifles held at the slope position with mechanical precision. Their red uniforms blazed against the gray stone walls as they moved with the measured, precise cadence of soldiers moving with purpose. These weren't actors or performers. These were combat veterans whose synchronized steps had been honed through countless hours of drill and real battlefield experience. 8 seconds. From the stable entrance came the thundering of hooves on cobblestones as mounted cavalry materialized, their horses snorting clouds of steam in the cold air. The riders sat perfectly straight in their saddles, their sabers glinting in the pale sunlight as they approached the scene with controlled urgency. The horses' trained military mounts moved with disciplined purpose despite the tension crackling through the air around them. 7 seconds. The south gate opened to reveal Royal Military Police emerging with quiet efficiency, their green armbands marking them as the enforcement arm of military law. Unlike the ceremonial guards, these men wore combat fatigues and carried modern equipment, their faces set with the serious expressions of professionals responding to a genuine incident. Their presence immediately elevated the situation from tourist spectacle to military crisis requiring immediate intervention. 6 seconds. The crowd watched in amazement as this coordinated response unfolded before their cameras, understanding they were witnessing something rarely displayed to the public. Children stopped crying as parents lifted them higher to see over the growing wall of red uniforms. Tourists who had come expecting a simple photo opportunity found themselves documenting a masterclass in military precision and institutional response. 5 seconds. Each guard took his position with timing so perfect it seemed choreographed, creating an impenetrable semicircle around Ward and the increasingly panicked Lomax. Their faces remained expressionless, but their presence spoke volumes about the collective strength of an institution under attack. The formation served multiple purposes, protecting their fellow guard, containing the threat, and demonstrating that an assault on one meant facing them all. 4 seconds. Lomax's face went white as he realized he was no longer confronting a single silent guard, but an entire military brotherhood. His eyes darted frantically between the ceremonial guards, the mounted cavalry, and the approaching Royal Military Police. The confident constable who had struck Ward moments earlier now looked like a child who had wandered into a restricted area and found himself surrounded by adults demanding explanations. 3 seconds. The transformation was complete, as what had been a casual tourist gathering became a serious military incident. The guards' rifles gleamed in the morning light, their bayonets fixed and ready. The mounted cavalry positioned their horses to block potential escape routes while maintaining perfect formation. The Royal Military Police moved with the quiet confidence of professionals who had trained for exactly this type of unprecedented situation. 2 seconds. Corporal Dean Massey of the Royal Military Police approached Lomax with calm authority, his boots clicking against the cobblestones as he prepared to take control of the situation. His measured steps and focused expression indicated that the military chain of command was now engaged, transforming this from a simple assault into an attack on British military tradition itself. The tourists watched in silence as institutional authority prepared to confront individual aggression. 1 second. The wall of red uniforms stood motionless around Ward, their collective discipline creating a barrier more powerful than any physical fortification. Each guard's training had prepared him for this moment when ceremony became reality, when their role as living symbols of British military tradition required them to respond to an unprecedented threat. Their synchronized breathing and perfect posture demonstrated centuries of military evolution focused on protecting their own. 0. The 10-second response was complete, proving that the Royal Guard's strength had never resided in any individual soldier, but in their unbreakable unity. What Lomax had seen as one isolated target surrounded by gawking tourists had revealed itself as a single component of a vast military machine capable of instant mobilization. The constable now found himself facing not just Ward's unwavering discipline, but the collective might of an institution that had defended the crown through world wars, terrorist attacks, and countless lesser threats. The tourists continued recording as they realized they had witnessed something historic, the moment when attacking one Queen's Guard truly meant facing them all. The coordinated response had taken exactly 10 seconds to demonstrate that individual aggression was powerless against collective strength, setting the stage for command authority to arrive and deliver the consequences Lomax had earned through his catastrophic failure of judgment. Captain Hannah Rhee emerged from the palace's eastern entrance, with the measured stride of someone accustomed to handling crises that never should have happened. Her approach cut through the tension like a blade, her uniform immaculate despite having been summoned from administrative duties to deal with an unprecedented assault on one of her soldiers. At 34, Rhee carried herself with the quiet confidence of an officer who had earned respect through competence rather than rank alone, her presence immediately shifting the dynamic from chaos to controlled military response. Her assessment of the scene took seconds but captured every critical detail. Ward remained at perfect attention despite the red mark across his cheek, his discipline unbroken even after absorbing an unprovoked attack. Lomax stood isolated among the wall of ceremonial guards, his earlier confidence replaced by the pale realization that he faced military authority rather than civilian complaint procedures. The tourists continued recording, their cameras now documenting the arrival of command authority to handle a situation that had spiraled far beyond a simple altercation. Rhee's first priority revealed everything about military leadership principles. She approached Ward directly, her voice carrying quiet authority as she addressed him by rank and name. "Lance Corporal Ward, report your status," she stated, her tone professional but concerned. This immediate focus on her soldiers' well-being demonstrated that protecting personnel came before everything else, including the ceremonial duties that had placed Ward in this impossible position. Ward's response came in the clipped military style that conveyed maximum information with minimum words. His report confirmed physical capability to continue duties while acknowledging the assault without breaking his ceremonial composure. Rievik's follow-up questions about injuries and fitness for duty showed the thorough assessment required when a soldier under her command had been attacked while unable to defend himself. The arrival of senior officials elevated the incident from simple assault to an attack on British military tradition itself. The black Mercedes with official plates pulled up to the palace gates, its occupants including a senior aide from the royal household, whose presence signaled that this violation had reached the highest levels of concern. These weren't bureaucrats responding to paperwork, but guardians of institutions that had survived world wars and terrorist attacks. Rievik's handling of Lomax demonstrated the stark difference between real authority and its counterfeit. While the constable stammered justifications and excuses, the captain maintained professional calm that made his desperation appear even more pathetic. Her measured responses contrasted sharply with his agitated defensive behavior, revealing how genuine leadership operates through controlled response rather than reactive emotion. Corporal Dean Massey of the Royal Military Police moved forward under Rhee's direction, his approach carrying the weight of military law enforcement. "Constable, I need you to step away from the guard and place your hands where I can see them," he stated, his voice leaving no room for negotiation. This decisive action transformed the situation from confrontation to arrest procedure, showing how proper authority handles violations through established protocol. The systematic documentation began immediately, as military personnel recorded every detail with precision that would make civilian investigators envious. Witness statements from tourists, photographic evidence of Ward's injury, and a complete timeline of events built an unshakable case against Lomax. Each recorded fact added weight to the consequences awaiting someone who had forgotten that authority meant responsibility rather than license for abuse. Rhee's intervention balanced multiple competing priorities with skill that comes from years of command experience. She protected her soldier while maintaining ceremonial dignity, ensured proper legal procedures while preserving military tradition, and demonstrated institutional strength without descending to the aggressor's level. Her approach proved that true power operates through channels designed to deliver justice rather than personal satisfaction. The captain's calm professionalism made Lomax's earlier aggression appear even more inappropriate by comparison. Where he had demanded immediate compliance through intimidation, she achieved actual results through proper procedure. Where he had lost control when challenged, she maintained perfect composure while facing a situation no officer training had anticipated. The contrast revealed why one wore the uniform of leadership while the other faced consequences for abusing his position. The growing crowd of officials surrounding the scene sent a clear message about institutional priorities. Military police secured evidence, royal household representatives assessed damage to ceremonial protocol, and senior officers ensured that proper channels would handle this unprecedented violation. Each participant understood their role in protecting something larger than any individual. Rhee's handling of the crisis demonstrated that genuine authority protects rather than attacks, serving justice through systems designed to ensure accountability. Her measured response honored both her soldier and the traditions he represented while ensuring that someone who had crossed every line of professional conduct would face appropriate consequences. The stage was now set for a reckoning that would prove why some mistakes carry prices too steep for any career to survive. The handcuffs clicked shut around Lomax's wrists with a sound that seemed to echo through his entire future. Royal Military Police Corporal Dean Massey read him his rights in the crisp morning air, while Ward remained at his post, the red mark on his cheek serving as evidence of what happens when authority becomes abuse. The tourists who had come for holiday photos now found themselves witnesses to a career ending in disgrace, their cameras capturing every moment of Lomax's transformation from confident MI6 officer to criminal defendant. The disciplinary machinery began turning within hours of the incident, stripping away Lomax's authority piece by piece with mechanical precision. His warrant card was confiscated immediately, followed by his radio, pepper spray, and handcuffs, each item representing a fragment of power he would never wield again. MI6 launched an internal investigation that would scrutinize every aspect of his service record, searching for patterns that might explain how a sworn officer could assault a soldier unable to defend himself. Criminal charges mounted against Lomax like storm clouds gathering over his destroyed career. The Crown Prosecution Service filed assault charges based on multiple video recordings and dozens of witness statements from horrified tourists. Additional charges followed as investigators discovered that striking a serving soldier during ceremonial duty constituted assault on Crown property, elevating the case beyond simple battery into an attack on the monarchy itself. His fellow officers began distancing themselves from his actions, with the swift efficiency of professionals protecting their own reputations. The MI6 canteen fell silent when Lomax entered, conversations stopping mid-sentence as colleagues turned away from someone who had violated every principle of professional conduct. Veteran officers who had worked alongside him for years suddenly couldn't remember his name when journalists called asking for character references. The media storm transformed the incident into a national symbol of authority gone wrong, with newspapers running side-by-side photographs of Ward's composed discipline and Lomax's moment of violent rage. Television news programs dissected the 10-second response that had surrounded the disgraced constable, analyzing how proper military training had contained a threat while maintaining perfect protocol. Editorial writers used the incident to examine broader questions about MI6 behavior and accountability. Ward continued his ceremonial duties throughout the investigation, his presence at the palace gates serving as a living reminder of what real strength looked like. While Lomax sat in interview rooms answering questions about his state of mind during the assault, Ward stood motionless through rain, snow, and curious crowds, his discipline unshaken by the attack he had endured. The contrast between their responses revealed everything about character under pressure. The incident became mandatory viewing in MI6 training academies, used as an example of how quickly professional careers could crumble when officers forgot their oath to serve and protect. Instructors played the footage showing Lomax's escalating aggression, pausing at key moments to explain how de-escalation techniques might have prevented the catastrophe. The case study sections focused on the constable's fatal decision to cross the rope barrier, marking the precise moment when frustration became criminal behavior. Legal experts appeared on television explaining how the justice system responds when someone attacks not just a person, but an institution representing centuries of British military tradition. The assault on Ward carried symbolic weight beyond the physical harm, striking at the heart of ceremonial duties that connected modern Britain to its historical foundations. Courts treated such violations seriously, understanding that attacking symbols of national identity threatened social cohesion itself. Lomax's sentencing hearing drew protesters demanding accountability for MI6 misconduct, their signs reading "Respect our soldiers" and "No badge means no free pass." The judge's remarks emphasized that authority came with responsibility, not license to abuse those unable to respond. The 6-month prison sentence reflected both the physical assault and the broader violation of trust between law enforcement and the public they served. The psychological evaluation ordered by the court revealed a man whose sense of authority had become so twisted that silence felt like defiance, requiring violent response. Lomax struggled to explain his actions even to himself, describing the guard's stillness as somehow insulting to his MI6 uniform. The assessment painted a picture of someone who had forgotten that real power came from earning respect rather than demanding it through force. Employment prospects evaporated for someone whose criminal record included assaulting a decorated veteran during ceremonial duty. Security firms rejected his applications immediately, understanding that hiring someone who had attacked a Queen's Guard would destroy their relationships with government contracts. Even private companies conducting background checks discovered the viral videos of his breakdown, making him unemployable in any position requiring public trust. The price of crossing the line proved that some mistakes carry consequences too severe for any career to survive, serving as a permanent reminder that authority without discipline becomes nothing more than sanctioned bullying waiting for its inevitable reckoning. Ward's absolute stillness in the face of Lomax's assault demonstrated strength that no amount of aggression could match, revealing the profound difference between reactive violence and disciplined power. His body absorbed the blow without flinching, his posture remaining perfectly aligned, as if the slap had been nothing more than a gentle breeze. The red mark on his cheek served as evidence of the attack, but his unwavering composure transformed what should have been a moment of humiliation into a display of unbreakable character that left witnesses speechless. The contrast between these two definitions of power couldn't have been starker as the morning unfolded before the palace gates. Lomax's violent assertion represented the most primitive form of dominance, fueled by frustration and the desperate need to feel superior to someone who wouldn't acknowledge his authority. His aggression revealed weakness masquerading as strength, exposing a man who had forgotten that real power comes from earning respect rather than demanding it through force. Ward's disciplined restraint, however, showcased a deeper understanding of what true strength actually meant. His silence spoke volumes about the warrior beneath the ceremonial uniform, someone who had learned through 3 tours in Afghanistan that survival often depended on choosing battles wisely. Those combat experiences had taught him that true warriors don't fight every provocation, but instead select their moments with strategic precision, understanding that sometimes the greatest victory comes from refusing to engage. His 3 combat tours had prepared Ward for exactly this moment, though he never could have anticipated facing such a test while performing ceremonial duties. The mountains of Afghanistan had taught him that staying alive required the ability to remain calm under extreme pressure, to think clearly when chaos erupted around him. Those lessons translated perfectly to this unprecedented situation, where reacting to provocation would have violated everything his uniform represented. Ward's silence became more powerful than any retaliation could have been, transforming him into a living symbol of what unbreakable character looked like under pressure. His refusal to acknowledge the assault, to give Lomax the satisfaction of a response, elevated him in the eyes of every witness present. The tourists who had come expecting to see a ceremonial guard instead witnessed something far more profound, a masterclass in maintaining dignity when faced with unprovoked aggression. The deeper lesson emerging from Ward's response revealed that self-control represents the highest form of strength, requiring more courage than striking back ever could. Anyone can throw a punch when angry, but it takes extraordinary discipline to absorb an attack while maintaining perfect composure. His restraint demonstrated mastery over his own impulses, proving that the greatest battles are often fought and won inside one's own mind. The crowd's support rallied around dignity rather than aggression, showing what people truly respect when confronted with clear moral choices. Their gasps of outrage weren't directed at Ward's lack of response, but at Lomax's violation of basic decency. The tourists instinctively understood that they were witnessing something special in Ward's unwavering discipline, recognizing authentic strength when they saw it displayed with such quiet power. Ward's response honored his uniform, his training, and the centuries of tradition he represented through every second of his motionless vigil. By refusing to break his ceremonial stance, he upheld principles that connected him to generations of guards who had stood their posts through world wars, terrorist threats, and countless lesser provocations. His discipline served as a bridge between past and present, demonstrating that some values transcend individual moments of crisis. The incident became a masterclass in handling provocation with grace under the most extreme pressure imaginable. Ward's ability to remain composed while being physically assaulted in front of dozens of witnesses required a level of self-control that few people could achieve under normal circumstances, let alone during such an unprecedented violation of protocol. His performance under pressure revealed the depth of his character and the effectiveness of his military training. Military experts later analyzed Ward's response as a perfect example of strategic thinking applied to an impossible situation. His decision to maintain his post rather than pursue justice through retaliation protected both his personal honor and the institution he served. By allowing the system to handle Lomax's violation through proper channels, Ward demonstrated that true warriors understand when not to fight as clearly as they know when action becomes necessary. The true meaning of strength revealed itself through Ward's unwavering discipline, proving that real power lies not in the ability to inflict harm, but in the courage to remain unbroken when facing unprovoked aggression. His response elevated him beyond the role of ceremonial guard into something approaching legend, a living example of what human character can achieve when properly trained and deeply committed to principles larger than personal satisfaction. This extraordinary display of restraint under pressure taught everyone present that authority built on respect and tradition carries far more weight than power enforced through intimidation and violence, setting the stage for understanding how collective unity can triumph over individual aggression every time. This confrontation revealed that true authority comes from earning respect rather than demanding it through force, teaching us that the strongest response to aggression is sometimes no response at all. The officer's silence carried more weight than any words could have delivered, his discipline transforming a moment of violence into a lesson about genuine strength. The officer's unwavering composure and the swift support of his fellow operatives proved that collective discipline trumps individual aggression every time. Their 10-second response demonstrated institutional power built on centuries of tradition rather than momentary anger. Remember this lesson when witnessing intimidation. Real strength stands silent, unshaken, and ultimately victorious.